Okay, so we begin propositional logic. And propositional logic is a form of deductive logic in the sense that what we're doing is we're working with binary truth values of simple sentences, true or false sentences. And what we will be doing is utilizing these true and false sentences to show if a conclusion in an argument follows necessarily, right? The hallmark feature of deductive arguments, right? This necessity, right? So to get us up and running in propositional logic, we need to think about the basics, okay? And given the name propositional logic, we need to figure out what this is, okay? So what is it that a proposition is, and how does it work in deductive arguments, okay? Now, we've talked a little bit about this, right? But just to revisit the definitions here, right? Recall that a proposition is simply a truth functional sentence, okay? Now, all that means is it is a sentence that is either true or false. That's it, right? So it's true or false, okay? Now, we can think of an example of a proposition simply as being something like, today is Tuesday. Okay. Now, if we just look at this example, right, we notice a few things about the sentence that we were taught about when we were quite young, when we were learning the basics of language and grammar. Okay, so looking at this proposition, this sentence, today is Tuesday, right? We notice that there are different parts of the sentence, okay? We call the first part here a subject, okay? All sentences in natural language, right, they have this part, right? A subject that this part operates over, okay? We call this the predicate, okay? And notice that the subject and the predicate are joined together by that word is. Okay, now this is going to be really important as we move through all of the details in propositional logic, right? Just understanding this basic relationship between subjects and predicates. Okay, now we can draw a distinction between two types of propositions. Okay, and the distinction simply is simple propositions and complex propositions, okay? And we get this distinction based on the number of subjects and predicates in the proposition, okay? Now, when we're thinking about simple propositions, all we have in mind is a proposition simply that has one subject, okay, and one predicate. That's it. That's all that is present in a simple proposition. One subject and one predicate, okay? So just looking back at this example, right, we see that this is a simple proposition. One subject, one predicate, okay? One more example that we will be using time and time again as we work through propositional logic, right? So the King of France is bald. So looking at this proposition, we see that we have one subject, the King of France, and we're saying something about him, right? We're predicating something of the subject, is bald, right? And notice that in the simple proposition, the example here, this is either true or false. Okay, at one time this might have been true, but in the mid-19th century they abolished the monarchy, so this is now a false proposition. There is no King of France, okay? And given that there's no King of France, there's nothing we can really say about that subject in a meaningful way, okay, in terms of the way the world is. All right, now when we were thinking about the alternative here, complex propositions, what we have in mind is simply something in addition to a simple proposition, okay? And when we talk about complex propositions, all we are saying is there is multiple subjects and multiple predicates. Okay? Multiple predicates. So there is more than one subject and more than one predicate, right? That's all we have in mind there. Okay. Now, for the stuff going forward in propositional logic, we're mainly going to be focused on complex propositions, those sentences with multiple subjects and multiple predicates. Okay. Now let's just see an example of how a complex proposition might look. Okay. So let's imagine this. Either the King of France is bald. Okay, so our predicate. And let's just introduce another proposition, okay? Or Patrick Smith is your instructor. Okay. So what we're going to need to start thinking about as we begin to analyze propositions in more detail, specifically complex propositions, is how the individual propositions that make up the complex proposition are related to one another. Okay, so notice in the complex proposition here, there just are two simple propositions, right? The King of France is bald. Right? That could be its own simple proposition. And a second proposition, Patrick Smith is your instructor. Okay? That could be its own true or false sentence. Now notice what binds them together, what connects them, what relates them to each other are these words. Right? Here we have either or. Okay? We use these connective words in our ordinary natural language every day. Okay? Now what we're going to start thinking about is how these sorts of words affect the logic of complex propositions when they are present. Okay, so these are the basics, and this is going to be very important for laying a groundwork going forward.